right, Gun Owners Radio, we make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening to Gun Owners Radio. If you're not subscribed, go to gunownersradio.com and subscribe to our email list so you know what's going on, especially in Southern California, but in the Second Amendment world in general. So go to Gun Owners Radio, sign up for our newsletter, check us out on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, and give us a follow.
That's it. And I don't know if everybody knows this or not yet, but our new home here is at Discount Gun Mart, where they've provided us a generous studio for our permanent home for Gun Owners Radio. As a way to say thanks, please come check out Discount Gun Mart. They have locations both on Marina Boulevard near SeaWorld, as well as in Santee near Gillespie Field. You can just go to discountgunmart.com for more info.
Hey, so I got a story for you before we go. It's got nothing to do with guns.
Uh-oh.
But I had an interesting story I thought you'd enjoy.
All right.
You want to hear it?
I
or
do.
You just want to talk about guns?
Both.
So I'm on Instagram yesterday, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm flipping through. And you know how they give suggestions, right?
Right.
And the algorithm is based on, what you're looking for, right? So it was showing me musicians.
Okay.
And specifically it was showing me kind of this like Americana, kind of not quite country, but kind of a, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like acoustic guitar, and I hear this singer, and she's got a very soulful voice.
Okay.
And she's playing along with an acoustic guitar. And it's really raw. And I'm like, wow, this sounds really good. And you couldn't quite see her, but you could make out that she was tiny frame, kind of a small woman, but she had this really soulful voice, which was kind of interesting. So I followed her. I thought, hey, I wonder if she's got more samples up, because this is really raw. This is like just her in an acoustic guitar. It's probably somebody, taping her or whatever,
Right.
or recording her with a phone or whatever.
Right.
So I'm listening. I'm looking for more samples to see if has she actually recorded or whatever. And I finally see a picture of her, and I thought, oh my God, I dated this girl.
No.
Back in the 90s when I was like 19 years old.
Really?
I was 19 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I can't believe it. I had no idea she was into music, and this is all like flowing through my brain like real time, right? I'm like, oh my God, that's, and I can't believe and whatever and blah, blah, blah. It's amazing. And I had no idea she was a musician. Maybe she got into music. I mean, this was 30 years ago or whatever. And then I thought, wait a minute. This girl's like 20.
It's her daughter.
It's her daughter.
Really?
It was her daughter. And it was and the other amazing thing is, it's not like this is San Diego. Like, this girl's in New York. Mm-hmm. The woman who I dated decades ago, we actually lived together when I was 19, East Coast, like way on the other side of the world, And I find this singer and I'm listening, and she is the replica of her, because the woman I dated is well into her 50s, and here's this 20-year-old, spitting image. It was a weird experience. It was very jarring.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like if you saw that scene in a movie, you'd be like, that never happens. You know what I mean? Like, that's not,
Right.
So anyway, pretty interesting though, huh?
Yeah. Small world.
Yeah. I unfollowed her.
Wow.
All right.
It's a little surprising.
Yeah. All right. That's my story, everybody. All right, go for it.
So,
You're up.
Well, now it's time for our gun truth of the week, so I'm curious what you're going to share.
Gun truth of the week. All right, everybody. FSU, that's Florida State University, criminal criminal justice professor Gary Kleck, who everybody's heard of. He's very, very famous when it comes to statistics, regarding defensive gun use, etc. So FSU criminal justice professor Gary Kleck studied a national self-defense survey produced by the CDC and concluded that for every suicide, accidental death, and homicide with a firearm, which is about 29,019, at least the year he did this, there are about 13 times more lives that are saved through a DGU, about 390,000. So by looking at official studies, official surveys, if you add up every suicide, accidental death, and homicide, somewhere around 29,000. This data is about a couple decades old. there are still 13 times more people that are actually saved through defensive gun use. Now, that defensive gun use, 390,000.
That's got to be a low number.
Well, the problem is
unreported.
There's not a actual definition.
Okay.
So some people, you actually have to pull the trigger, and that's a defensive gun use.
True.
Some people don't count cops, when they do their surveys. Some people, it just depends on how they define a defensive gun use. So whenever I'm in the media, I say between 500,000 and 3 million times per year in America, because the most broad definition of a DGU, it's more like 3 million a year. But when they start to kind of,
categorize it. Well, you think about it too. So for every suicide, accidental death, homicide, and a firearm, you have a body with a bullet hole.
Yeah.
Right. That's a little bit more factual to count. The whole DGU, I guarantee you there's plenty that are never reported.
They're never reported.
Or never talked about.
And again, what counts? Like, what if you yell, someone's breaking in your house, you yell, I have a gun.
Right.
Does that count? Is that a DGU?
Depends on who you ask.
I think it is.
Right?
I think it's definitely a DGU.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is that at least 13 times more lives are saved through DGUs than are taken by suicide, accidental death, and homicide with a firearm. Wha-bam. What do you think about that?
Mic drop.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Q&As. You have Q's, I have A's. Every week, people ask me questions. They send them in via email. Sometimes they come in through Instagram. This is one that's been asked a few different ways, a few different times over the last couple of weeks. Basically, they want to know where we stand. We being San Diego County Gun Owners officially, Gun Owners Radio officially, me personally. They want to know where we stand on open carry versus CCW. That's a good question. But the reality is all the above. All of the above is where we stand. And I think that it's a tricky question in that when you ask about open carry, what are you asking about? There's no bill that's looking to make us open carry in California. That's not happening. You know what I mean? So is it a national bill? And when more specifically, are you asking, would we reject, like, for example, national reciprocity for CCWs because it's not open carry and permitless carry? Would we reject that? That doesn't make any sense. The answer is no, of course not. Everything we can possibly do to move the ball forward, we're a fan of. So usually when people ask, they're asking like this very broad and general question. They really just want me to say, what they want to hear. They want to draw a line in the sand. But the reality is, I'm not here to, to pick apart or whatever. This is Second Amendment, and this is really, really Second Amendment. And we're only going to stand for stuff that's really, 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 really Second Amendment. The reality is, we couldn't get CCWs in San Diego before 2017. I mean, it was basically impossible. There were about 1,100 people that had one. And rather than sit around and wait for perfect, we decided, hey, let's get this ball moved forward by at least moving CCW forward, So that's what we did. We put pressure on the sheriff, and we made sure that even before Bruin, people could get their CCW in San Diego, and we were successful. And that is a good move. We weren't going to wait around for perfect. We weren't going to kill good in the search for great. And so that's what we did. We said, hey, if this is an avenue, let's go down it. But if you are kind of this philosophically perfect person, you're not going to be happy. But I've also found that the folks that are kind of philosophically perfect, the ones that are asking the questions, like, well, do you like CCWs? Permission slip from the government. If you like CCWs, then you're not really pro-Second Amendment. Those people aren't doing anything. So I don't really care. You know what I mean? They're just kind of complaining and on the internet. They're not actually accomplishing anything. You can fall back on legal reasons. If you look at the Bruin decision, it was written by the most pro-Second Amendment Supreme Court justice maybe ever. certainly on the court right now. And that's Clarence Thomas. And he even said that, hey, you know what? CCWs are not unconstitutional. Whether I agree with him or not, kind of doesn't matter. What matters is that's the parameters we're playing with. And what I'm not going to do is sit here with my arms crossed and say, well, we're not going to do anything unless we do open carry, permitless open carry. Because that's not the world we live in. That's not the reality we live in. If there's a bill, that makes sense and it's open carry and it's California, you know what I mean? If there's something specific, but kind of this, off in the ether broadly, like, well, geez, we want to test and make sure that Gun Owners Radio and Michael Schwartz are pro Second Amendment enough. I don't play those games. We're for all the above. Whatever way we can help people advance their right to keep and bear arms, whatever steps we can take towards a positive outcome, that's what we're going to support. That's what we're going to support. So where do we stand? I guess we don't really have an official stance, but I can tell you everything we can possibly do to make sure that you can defend yourself, you can defend your family, that you can carry, that you can own, that your rights are not infringed. That's where we stand. That's where we stand. So that's not going to make some people happy, but we can't. We can't make everybody happy. I think it's going to make the majority of the people very, very happy, particularly the 23,000 people or something like that have a CCW now who couldn't get one before 2017. They're able to carry. They're able to defend themselves. And every step we can take from here on out. There was actually a columnist for the Review Journal the paper in Vegas. And he was like a diehard libertarian. I wish I could remember his name. But he wrote one time, it was something like, unless you support an underage black girl buying a machine gun with no ID and no wait period, then you're anti-gun. You know what I mean? And it was like, okay, well, maybe he's got a point, but that's just not the world we live in. Like, we could sit here and like I said, have a smirk on our face and feel great about how pure we are, or we can move the ball forward, and that's what everybody's doing. There's not one lawsuit that's going to win everything back. There's not one elected official that's going to win everything back. There's not one campaign. There's not one donation that's going to win the whole thing. We have to do this incrementally, and there are actual actions that have to be taken. Opinions just aren't good enough. So that's where we're at.
Mike, I was just going to say that reminds me of a quote from Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
When you say
That's true.
Our stances we're for progress.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Anything that advances our freedoms.
It is. Without compromising our principles.
Right.
There's at some point you have to look at a proposal, you have to look at a candidate, you have to look at an initiative, and you have to go, hey, does this compromise our principles? It's not perfect, but does it compromise our principles? Which we don't. We've never compromised our principles. So anyway, that's where we stand. I don't know why this suddenly came up. Honestly, I did a couple of Google searches, and for some reason the last few weeks this has come up more and more. I don't know what happened or what, but we're very proud of the progress we made on CCWs. We hope to see it continue, and if there's some kind of proposal that regarding permitless carry and or open carry, let's take a look. All right. Okay, so that's all the Q's and all the A's. I really wanted to kind of go into that and talk about it. Smart, professional, incremental progress. That's what we've made. That's what we've seen. That's what works. That's what we're proud to see. I mean, for decades, nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden we're moving in the right direction. It's awesome. All right. So let's go on to lawsuits, the lawsuit update.
That's it. So this is our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know about all the current lawsuits in the courts and going through legislatures. But remember, I'm not a lawyer, neither is Mike. We cannot give you legal advice. All legal advice should come from a properly licensed California lawyer. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is actually a lawyer. John has been helping more and more people fight those gun violence restraining orders, GVROs. And if you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
And before I get into it, thank you, Mike White, $10 super chat donation. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being a listener and a super fan. Thank you. Okay, not a whole lot going on in the course. A couple of things here and there. You know, I really try to piece together all the things you got to know, you know, without going into a 10-minute analysis on everything. Mm-hmm. And
I was really hoping there'd be an update on the Richards case by now.
Yeah, it's the week before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay, so first thing is we talked about the ATF, the head of the ATF, and who Trump might pick. And we still have a lot of time. Trump's not even in office yet. But it looks like a guy named Blake Masters. He appears to be the guy that Trump wants to head for ATF. He's a businessman who made a living in corporate finance and venture capital specifically. He got his law degree from Stanford, which I'm not sure if that's good or bad. But you know what I did find out about Stanford is, so Stanford, there's a lot of left. I think Chelsea Clinton went to Stanford, right? Stanford, it's in California. It's in the Bay Area. It's pretty south, but it's in the Bay Area. But I've actually found out. So you'd think that it might as well be late. It's always in competition with Berkeley, like Cal. They're always So you'd think that it is a far left wing university, which it is. Without doubt. There's a lot of left wing professors and people that come from Stanford. But in doing research up in the Bay Area for an expansion, something similar to what San Diego County Gunleaders is down here, found out that Stanford actually has a fairly strong right of center group of professors and students.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. They're kind of the counterculture.
Interesting.
At Stanford. So anyway, it could be good, could be bad, but he graduated, that's where he went to law school. He appears to be rock solid on the Second Amendment, but the only reason we know that is because he ran for office and made some videos. So that's all we have to go on. It's all rhetoric. He hasn't actually done anything, He hasn't served in office. He hasn't, headed an initiative. He hasn't, done any actions. He's just said a bunch of words is really what it boils down to. Unlike our favorite, Brandon Herrera, right? He's actually done things. He's actually had skin in the game. And,
love Brandon.
So I don't know. Blake Masters appears to be, an okay pick. I don't think he's a Brandon Herrera. I think he has some strengths and he has some weaknesses, but I don't know. I'm kind of a glasses half full guy. Now, he does have a little bit of controversy around him. The most controversial thing that Masters has said is when he was running for Senate in Arizona, and by the way, he lost to Giffords, the anti-gun guy, the guy that he's actually an astronaut or was an astronaut, and he's married to Gabby Giffords, who was the victim of an attempted murder. Mm-hmm. And they set up an anti-gun organization, and then he got elected in Arizona. She was a congressperson in Arizona, and now he's the the federal senator from Arizona, which is not good. How did Arizona elect the head of a anti-gun group?
Great question.
As senator, right? Because things aren't always as they seem.
Right.
Things aren't always left and right. Things aren't always red and blue. Things aren't always pro and anti. Anyway, so while he was running to be the next senator in Arizona, he said this was USA Today in an interview, they were talking about gun violence. And while campaigning, he said, quote, "It's gangs. It's people in Chicago, St. Louis shooting each other. Very often, black people, frankly, and the Democrats don't want to do anything about that." Now, the reason that's controversial is because obviously he injected race into that. Mm-hmm. And if you go out there and look at people attacking him for saying that, they leave off that, and the Democrats don't want to do anything about that. The point he was making was, look, we have to do something about the fact that there are a lot of inner city, particularly minorities, particularly males, 15 to 40, who are living a lifestyle where they've decided to be professional criminals and used guns to kill each other.
And he's highlighting the problem, which is not that.
He's highlighting the problem. So
Right.
he gave them an opportunity to use his words against him without, addressing the actual point, which is par for the course in politics. But if you're you're at the water cooler and someone says, "Well, I hear he's a racist," Blake Masters, he said some racist stuff. What he said was about quote unquote gun violence in a USA Today interview is it's gangs, it's people in Chicago, St. Louis shooting each other. Very often, black people, frankly, and the Democrats don't want to do anything about that. I want to help everybody. If someone's living in a situation where they feel their only out is to be a professional criminal and carry a gun, I think we should help. Okay, that's the update on the possible next person for ATF. The final legal brief in the Gray versus Jennings Second Amendment case before the Supreme Court was filed. This is an assault weapon and magazine ban, so-called assault weapon. Yeah, I made the air quotes, in the state of Delaware. It's actually, this case is one of three possible cases that the Supreme Court might actually grant cert. What does grant cert mean? It means they might hear it. If you go to sdcgo.org/lawsuits, we actually have a terminology guide, and it'll tell you things like what does it mean to grant cert, and that means that they'll hear the arguments. This is in the Third Circuit, and in the briefing there was a lot of talk about irreparable damages. So the pro Second Amendment side was basically saying, hey, it's the right to keep and bear arms. It's it's not a second class right. Of course, it includes extremely popular semi-automatic rifles, kind of the usual standard Bruin argument. And then the other side was basically saying, well, there's really what are the damages here, which is kind of interesting. It's a really weak argument. They were basically saying, there's no monetary number that you can put on damages. So what exactly are the damages? Just because they can't own the toy that they want to own, I'm paraphrasing, they didn't actually use the word toy, but that's how dismissive they were. Are there actually damages? And of course there are. Of course there are damages when your natural rights are infringed upon. And then the last update, I thought this was interesting. Attorney Beck, we've had him on. He's right here in San Diego, and I wanted to pull this up. He had a little update that I just wanted to bring for everyone, which is coming up slowly.
Posted on his Facebook.
Alan Beck, great guy. He said, it's been about 2 months since we filed the request to have our challenge to Hawaii's sensitive places law heard by the en banc court. This is the lawsuit challenging Hawaii's prohibitions on where you can carry a handgun. So it's very similar to SB2 here in California. So far, we've heard nothing from the court. Due to the amount of time that has passed, I suspect this means the en banc petition will be denied. But a sizable number of the Ninth Circuit judges are unhappy with that decision and are writing a dissent to voice their disagreement. That's good news. Dissents like these serve as a message to the Supreme Court that it should take a case. If not this case, a case. If I'm right, this is Alan speaking, the next step is to petition the Supreme Court for review. Petitions cost a sizable amount of money because of the specialized printing and formatting costs, which need to be outsourced to a special printing company. We're getting close to raising the money, and we need to file the petition due to the generous donations of Hawaiian gun owners. I'm hoping one more push during the holiday season will take us over the top, et cetera, et cetera. So go look up his, Give Send Go. So GIVESENDGO, and look for his case.
Yep. .com.
Yeah, .com.
You think a permit's hard to get in California. Hawaii is even more difficult.
It's even harder. Yeah. It's even harder. Well, both have gotten much better since Bruin, but You're right. It's still much harder. But check out Attorney Alan Beck on Facebook. You can see the link there. He is a great guy. He's a warrior. He's extremely smart. He's extremely active, and he's a really, really good dude. I wanted to give you that update because he deserves it. Okay, and that is all you need to know this week.
All right, that's our legal and legislative segment.
Okay, our guest today is a guy named Barry Jantz, and he is one of the most respected political minds in San Diego. He's very well known, very well respected by left, right, and middle. He's done such a fantastic job. He's a consultant. But what you'll really like about him is decade and a half before Bruin, before there was even Heller, before all this was happening, before Peruta, Barry Jantz was a warrior on the La Mesa City Council, attempting to get La Mesa to issue CCWs, basically shall issue CCWs to La Mesa residents through their police chief. That's what he was fighting when he was elected official. I'm having him on today to talk about Nora Vargas. She is a supervisor, San Diego County Board supervisor, who decided that even though she just won her race, that she's not going to take office in January, and she's not going to have herself sworn in. This segment is sponsored by Cargo. Cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com. They're at 423 Broadway, El Cajon. Cargo is a Byrna dealer now. It looks a lot like a firearm, but it's not. It shoots kinetic rounds to change the behavior of an attacker. That's basically solid plastic about the size of a paintball, and they hurt, but it's non-lethal. Go visit them at their store in El Cajon, and you can actually try them at their Byrna range. Use code GOR for 10% off of their website, or mention Gun Owners Radio or SDCGO at their store. They have all kinds of cool gear. Check them out. Go see them today. And you know how many more shopping days till Christmas? Like 2, 1.5. Gosh. So go on down, check them out.
That's it. Great gift.
So without further ado, Barry Jantz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, Michael. How you doing?
Good, man.
How you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I wanted to talk to you about the county board, specifically Nora Vargas. You actually wrote a really good analysis on the mechanics of what happens, because this is extremely unique for somebody to overwhelmingly win their election and then doesn't seemingly have any kind of controversy that would rise to the occasion of forcing them to step down, but she's deciding that she's not going to be sworn in January and fill out the next 4 years of her term. This is pretty unprecedented, right?
I called it unprecedented. And by the way, thanks for reminding me there's only 1.5 shopping days till Christmas. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I'll send you my list.
But it is definitely unprecedented. I don't think I've ever heard of it before. I certainly have heard of it elected and then dying before they could take office or something like that. But this is really kind of out there for it to happen. And no one really has a clear understanding of why.
And I want to talk why in a little bit, but first I want to talk about the mechanics. You wrote a really great article on sdrostra.com that talked about the kind of mechanics so that people can understand, the civic, give them a little bit of a civics lesson. So she's not stepping down exactly. She's just deciding that, hey, this term I won, I'm not going to fulfill it. So what talk about the mechanics of that? Like who, how do they replace her? How do they pick a new person? Like what are the mechanics of this, since it's so unprecedented and so odd? Walk us through kind of, what now?
Well, what now? First, either a special election or an appointment to fill the vacancy by the Board of Supervisors. And that's really first up. They will, Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Blossom Reamer will both get sworn in January 6th. And it's really kind of the first order of business. Well, we have a vacancy that's starting right now because Nora Vargas is not getting sworn in at the same time they do, right? So they have an immediate vacancy they need to address. So the first thing will be to direct the county staff, whether they want to do a special election or they want to consider an appointment. They may direct staff to start the process. They may have, a public hearing on with the public coming in and saying what they think, but that'll start the process. I truly believe, based on the Nathan Fletcher example a couple of years ago, that they will opt for a special election. And what's so really kind of embarrassing about this situation. I don't know if it's embarrassing to any of us or the public, but really that the cost of an election was just held when Nora Vargas won overwhelmingly.
Right.
And so now they're going to have to redo it, right? So sometimes I guess that's the cost of a representative government, right? You got to go through these processes, but we won't even get into that. But the other thing is then, what do they do about selecting a chair of the Board of Supervisors? Now, Nora Vargas, she's been chair for 2 years. She wasn't planning on, even if she had taken office as planned, she wasn't going to be chair again. It was probably going to be Tara Lawson-Remer with 3 votes, including Vargas's, to ensure that happened, meaning 3 Democrats on the board. We have a 2-2 board now. But understood, it's a nonpartisan board, right? But let's face it, everything is political and everything is partisan when it comes down to it. So Joel Anderson and Jim Desmond, Republicans, Tara Lawson-Remer and Monica Montgomery Steppe, Democrats. So that makes it really interesting on what happens with an officer election. I was suggesting in my article on sdroster.com that maybe it's going to be like Lebanon, a coalition government of some sorts until this can all be figured out. But we'll see what happens.
What is that? What would that mean? A coalition government? What is that?
Well, that would be unprecedented too. I think they probably have to have a chair because there's board committee assignments, there's appointments to SANDAG, MTS, multiple JPAs, Joint Power Agreement boards, and things like that. There's appointments to other regional agencies, state and national agencies. Remember, this is one of the biggest counties in the United States. You can't go with having those appointments made. And to a certain extent, you need a chair to derive the process. So, but are an Anderson and a Desmond as 2 Republicans going to just give it to Tara Lawson-Remer just because she wants it, vice versa, right? So it'll be interesting to see whether they find some solution that might, as I suggest, a creative solution. And well, let's find a way to co-chair this leadership until we have a 5th board member. There's been vacancies on boards and city councils and school boards before, but to start the very first meeting, the organizational meeting, when you elect a chair, and to have someone who was the chair not even showing up, just saying, I'm not going to take the oath of office, that's what's so strange about it.
Yeah, it makes it really difficult. Now, first off, her district is extremely Democrat. Or it's at very least, it is a safe Democrat seat, right? So
there's twice as many Democrats as there are Republicans in this district. This is District 1. It's the South County District. In fact, there's more declined estates by 4 percentage points or so than there are Republicans. So yes, it's a very safe Democratic seat. And those that are declined estate tend not to be that way because, like in East County, we're used to people being declined estate because they're very conservative, and the Republican Party is often not conservative enough for them, but they will still vote for a conservative. In this case, the declined estates, the independents, if you will, tend to swing more to the left. So it's a very difficult district to compete for a Republican. But if it's a special election, low turnout.
Which favors Republicans usually, but it would be as big a story to elect a Republican as it is that she stepped down after winning an election. You know what I mean? Like, it's highly unlikely that there's going to be a Republican, or it might even be, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's highly unlikely that there's going to be even, someone that's close to the center. I mean, it's a pretty extreme left district. And where I'm going with this is, it seems like the 2 Republicans, Joel Anderson and Jim Desmond, it behooves them to push this process off as long as possible and not rush to get a 5th person in that seat. Am I wrong?
Well, sure. And this is quite frankly the way it was looked like as well in the Nathan Fletcher situation. it wasn't legitimately thought that even in a special election with a low turnout, that in another district that was strongly Democratic, that ultimately Republican would win. So Desmond and Anderson 2 years ago had more power than they'd ever had, being in a 2-2 situation for a brief amount of time. So it's kind of back to that. One player is different, and Monica Montgomery Steppe instead of Nora Vargas, but it's still a 2-2 makeup. So yes, there is a thought there. And this is, by the way, a special election will take approximately 6 months, if not a little bit longer, once the dust settles on what they're going to do. So that's 6 months where Desmond and Anderson, as the Republicans on the board, have a lot more clout than they would have in a situation down the road. Now, the Republican Party, of course, will argue that if it's the right Republican, big name, high ID Republican, especially, say Chula Vista, the largest city in the district, is about 46% of the district. So, of course, names have been floated. The Republican Party will argue that if it's the right Republican, then they can compete in a very low turnout situation.
You're talking about the mayor of Chula Vista, John McCann, is already kind of hinted he might be interested in running, and the city of Chula Vista is 46%, and he won by at least 50%. I don't remember the exact number, but he got 60% of the vote or something like that. So 60% of 46% of that district, he could at least have a strong showing in a low turnout special election. Is that kind of the analysis there?
It's certainly a strong showing, certainly a credible showing. Whether it's enough, of course, the Democratic Party, Labor, will be doing polling all through a special election, and they will be ensuring the turnout is as high as it's possible among Democrats, so nothing like that happens. So, back to your question, I'm thinking probably a Desmond and an Anderson, two Republican supervisors, will view it as, okay, ultimately in 6 months, are we obviously going to have a 3-2 board Republican? I'm not sure they're looking at the world that way, but it remains to be seen.
But maybe somebody they could work with. Is there anybody on the left or any Democrats that you can think of? If you had to pick 2 or 3 possibilities, what 2 or 3 names would you throw out there?
That's someone the Republicans can work with. Sure.
Actually, no, not some of the Republicans work with. Who would you say are the top 3 names that Democrats are probably going to look at and run?
Yeah, well, names are being thrown about. We certainly have the city of Chula Vista. There's John McCann we mentioned, who's a Republican. There's Democrats on that board. In National City as well, some names have been touted. But I think a big name Democrat is probably a contender, and so therefore, Councilmember Moreno from the city of San Diego, because it's the city of San Diego, is Vivian Moreno. That would be a big name. Now, here's an interesting one that's been brought up, and I don't know that he's said anything yet, but it's Assemblymember David Alvarez. Keep in mind, he's been in office for a few years. You get 12 years between the Assembly and the Senate. So someone like that, especially if you want to be closer to home and want to be in a really high profile position for 8 years, when you're only going to have that long or even longer in the legislature now, is it time to look at county supervisor? So don't be surprised if a big name like that comes into play. Then all of a sudden you have a Democrat with name ID already, significant name ID, in portions of the district, if not a lot of the district, running for that seat.
Yeah, boy, what a mess. I got to tell you, I don't pay attention to all 58 counties in California, but I spent a lot of time in Orange County paying attention, and Riverside paying attention, and San Bernardino paying attention, even a little bit of Imperial and a little bit of LA. No county politically is as interesting as San Diego. It's unbelievable the things that happen here, from people stepping down and people, having weird alliances and running against each other. This is politically, I think, the most interesting county in California and possibly the entire United States. It's crazy the things that happen here.
When Nora Vargas made her announcement a couple of days ago, I had it posted up on social media, kind of the word I use on occasion, wowza, with two Z's, wowza with two Z's. And there were some folks that used to work in politics or got their start, or at least cut their teeth in politics in San Diego. Now they're elsewhere in the state. And some of them, weighed in and said, the one thing I really miss is San Diego politics, because it's always so interesting.
So
in a way, we're down here, and sometimes we feel like we're ignored, right? But we are our own microcosm in San Diego County, with LA to the north, as that's the behemoth that it is to the north, and that's us being our own kind of microcosm here, with a different nation to the south, and the ocean to one side and the mountains the other, and then LA to the north. So we kind of are in a way a little our own country. When I said coalition government, where two parties come together and try to govern something, there's a lot of nations out there that do that. Well, San Diego County is larger than some of those nations. So, in a way, we are our own little nation.
Now, I don't think that I don't think a real possibility is that they would appoint somebody in any way. I don't think that they'll appoint somebody and then say, hey, you can't run, but just sit here and fill the seat until we get somebody. I don't think they'd appoint somebody and say, yes, you can run. It doesn't seem like that is going to go over with the voters. It doesn't seem like that is a good idea for anybody. What are your thoughts on them appointing and then doing a special election later?
Sure. And I think that is an alternative. I think they can appoint someone as an interim position until the special election's held. They could have done that when Monica Montgomery step one. And that was a primary and a general process, with Amy Reichert making it into the runoff against Monica Montgomery step in a pretty left-leaning district there. So that took some time, and they did have the option of appointing someone into an interim position. And you could technically do that and say, hey, we're doing it with the understanding that you're not going to run. Because they don't want to give someone that title of appointed incumbent that they can use in the special election. That's been done before, but it's been quite a few years. I think the last time the County Board of Supervisors did something like that was 1983, when Roger Hedgecock won mayor 2 years through his term on the Board of Supervisors, and they appointed someone who agreed not to run, but they appointed that someone for 2 years. Okay, this is a 4-year term. How do you justify not letting the voters decide? Yeah. And of course, the main justification would be the significant cost of the special election. But this isn't a little city. This is the county of San Diego. Yeah, so
3.5
I just think
people.
I think it's problematic. If the Republicans on the board found someone, a Democrat, say that that was palatable enough for them to work with for a time, well, the Democrats on that board that person's going to be not palatable to them. So I think it's very difficult to think there's going to be any appointment, or maybe even an interim appointment.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the reasons. And this is pure speculation. Nobody knows why she's doing this except for her and maybe a couple of people around her, but no one actually knows the answer. This is just us completely speculating on some of the guesses out there, some of the things that have been written. So we're speculating on speculation. So
we are.
Take this all with a grain of salt. But I think
everything's been put out. About how something like so out there. If she had decided, 8 months ago, I'm not going to run for re-election, that might have been a shocker to folks, but it wouldn't have been this kind of shocker. So everyone thinks, okay, there's got to be something else in the frying pan on this. Now her reason stated in writing was that she was, it's not, and technically, as I said in the article, it's not a resignation. She's filling out her term. She's just refusing to take the seat. Right. So let's call it a departure. But her reason for doing that, she said, is for personal safety and security reasons. Well, that's not saying, hey, I've got personal family issues. That's not saying I have health issues. And she has had some health issues, which she's been open about, right? But she wasn't saying that. She wasn't saying anything like that for personal safety and security reasons. What does that suggests something she's not comfortable with. She's actually afraid of. And so, of course, everyone is speculating, and you said it, speculation upon speculation. We're speculating about speculation. I mean, I even heard someone thought it had something to do with drones. So that's how crazy it is.
Let's kind of let's go one by one and just kind of talk
Sure.
about the possibility. First off, I think one thing that everyone agrees on is that the reason she gave about personal security and that sort of thing, no one is buying that. There's not one person out there that actually thinks that she's deciding not to take office because she's worried about her personal security. I don't think anybody out there is buying that. It is clearly an excuse. There's nothing that justifies it. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, the only thing I would say to that, and it's not, I guess everybody has to define what they feel is their own safety and security, and she may have a very low threshold. but so how can we question if someone feels unsafe? I guess they feel unsafe, even if the rest of us might feel safe. So, I don't, but yeah, let's put that one aside, and then it goes to the health issues. It goes to the health issues. I mentioned that one. She's been open about them. If this were an extension of that, I think it would be. She'd say, her it's health.
Yeah, that would be an easy out. That if she said, "Hey, it's my health," if it really were her health, that would be an easy out. I think everybody would understand that. No one would, there wouldn't be any conspiracy theories. That would be an easy out. So I think that her health can be ruled out too. It's it's probably not a reason.
Now, another obvious thing that folks are bringing up, because it's been in the news, and that is a top administrator of the county, Michael Vu, who wanted to be chief administrative officer. He's filed a claim with the county, about what tactics, and he's claiming that two supervisors, Lawson Rimmer and Nora Vargas, were involved in some what he says are shady reasons because for race reasons and things like that. So of course he's teed up a claim. We'll see how that goes. That could turn into a lawsuit. Some people think, that could be embarrassing to her. But as Scott Lewis mentioned in Voice of San Diego, which I link from my article this morning, it's just not plausible that you would, run from your own tail in advance of that really getting serious at all. It's only a claim with the county right now. It's having turned into a lawsuit. People don't try to get in front of things like that. And it's a civil lawsuit. This is not criminal.
It's not criminal. She's not
in any way at this point. Yeah. So that's not really plausible.
And even so, if there is some kind of lawsuit like that, he pointed out, and very intelligently, I thought, that if you're in office, the last thing you do is resign. That's actually a very important chip that you have in your back pocket to negotiate with if you have done something that you're guilty of, whether civil or criminal. The last thing, so there's a lot of protection for elected officials. So, it'd be odd for her to resign so quickly and give up that chip, right? Or is that?
Oh yeah, that's very much the case. The thought is, okay, is there some criminal investigation out there, and that's not even the Michael Vu thing, something else that no one knows about yet, and the DA has gone and said, you resign and we'll make the charges and less for you. But I mean, very typically, someone has caught wind of some kind of criminal investigation like that going on. It's just not completely in the dark where no one knows about it except the DA and who's ever being investigated. Okay, so that's not plausible. That's not plausible.
On that, I kind of have my own little theory that kind of builds on that. If you've been watching things happen over the last year, it's become fairly obvious that Tara Lawson Raymer and Nora Vargas do not get along. They're not entirely happy with each other. I don't know how to most accurately phrase it, but they seem to butt heads a lot. One of the more obvious ones was when Vargas, as chair, got up and left in the middle of a meeting and wouldn't allow Tara to pass some of the things that she had on the agenda right in the middle of her election. And those two don't appear to be getting along real well. And her statement, Tara's statement, I want to read it real quickly. Statement from Vice Chair Lawson Raymer, and this is on that she issued after Nora Vargas left. I greatly appreciate Chair Vargas' service to the county and our community, and I hope she finds resolution to the challenges with which she is grappling. Then she goes on to say, as Vice Chair of the County Board of Supervisors, let me assure you that the work in the new direction of the county will continue moving forward. We will continue advancing our agenda, et cetera, et cetera. I thought that piece in that first sentence, I hope she finds resolution to the challenges with which she's grappling. That's not very that's not real warm and fuzzy. And I'm wondering if she has found something. I'm wondering if she somehow has constructed this. You know, Tara Lawson Raymer, she's fairly well connected on the left side of the political spectrum, and I'm wondering if somehow she uncovered something or she somehow is forcing her out. Totally speculation. I have no idea, but I know that statement by Tara Lawson Raymer it felt like there was a hidden message behind it, and maybe I'm just maybe I've just seen too many episodes of West Wing or something like that. But
well, I don't that maybe that could be House of Cards, but
House of Cards.
So
yeah.
I guess without even thinking through that more and having something substantiated, I think it's just if you see it as, and I don't see it as warm and fuzzy either, it's being professional, cordial, kind. It's not being, you've been such a champion with me as we've partnered on the Board of Supervisors. There's nothing like that, right? So this is, by the way, this is reflective of differences within the Democratic Party, often between those who are way staunchly more pro-labor and those who sometimes take a little bit of a stand against labor. And I think that, Nora Vargas has done that. I mean, she, when it came to the selection of a chief administrative officer, the Board of Supervisors got kind of in a pickle over that. That labor was not particularly happy. Labor was mailing into Vargas's district. But of course, this was months ago too. She could have said, okay, I'm not even going to run for re-election because this is not worth it.
Right.
It's not. So that one also, that she's just can't stomach the attacks from those on her own side. Forget about the right. You're always going to deal with those, right? But those on her own side, she can't stomach anymore. So that one's, I'm not sure it's plausible either, because she was facing that. And to think that she can't stand people screaming at the Board of Supervisors, that happened all through COVID.
Yeah.
As it transitioned from Nathan Fletcher's chair to Nora Vargas's chair, that was happening on a regular basis. So she's used to those sorts of things. So there's something else obviously
so
in the frying pan. I'm not sure we'll ever know. I
think you might be right. We may never know. One of the more extreme ones that I wanted to just shoot down and pretty quickly, she just helped pass this super sanctuary county thing, where basically she said we're not going to cooperate with federal efforts to deport illegal aliens in San Diego. And she got it passed. She wasn't the only one that voted for it, obviously, but she championed the thing and really pushed it through. And that is a big issue for her. And the idea that there's kind of been this idea that, well, now that Trump has been elected, she's been embarrassed by the reaction from the future Trump administration, or she's afraid that they're going to come and arrest her or whatever. None of that is. First off, I think she's probably more proud than ever. If she were to stay in office, this would be a hill that she would absolutely climb to die on. I mean, this would make her a hero. And there's no universe out there where the Trump administration would arrest someone on the county board of supervisors for passing a regulation. You know what I mean? It's just none of that makes sense. It's such a conspiracy theory.
Right. Now, considering that vote took place after Trump won the election, it wasn't like, oh,
Right.
We voted on it and then Trump surprisingly won. What do we do now? This has been since Trump won the election. In a way, I saw it as no different than some of the things Gavin Newsom is doing to try to rush certain legislation through special session stuff, before Trump takes office. This is a district, we described the district earlier. This is a district that Nora Vargas is in where that position she took and championed on Sanctuary County that does not hurt her in any way, shape, or form. She can fundraise on it. She can, if she wants to parlay something like that into future office after she would be termed out in 4 years, had she taken office, she'd be able to do that. So yeah. I think the reason that's come up is because it's the most recent controversial vote, right prior to her announcement. So of course, people are going to focus on, well, something's happened since that vote, right? Something's happened since that vote. Now, since it is a recent vote, is she getting, potentially is she getting the kind of threat she never received before because of that vote? I think everyone on the supervisors has alluded to getting threats over the years, including significant ones during COVID. So it's just another thing you throw in there and say, okay, is it? But is it really plausible? I don't think so.
Well, I think the only thing we know is that we may not ever know. Something might come out in the next couple months. Something may never come out. Tends to have a short attention span and a short memory in the political world. So it's very probable that by February, no one will even remember who Nora Vargas was. So I don't think we're going to.
Michael, as I pointed out in the article, her reason will come out, or it won't come out. but either way, that doesn't fill a seat on the Board of Supervisors. It doesn't fill a vacancy on the Board of Supervisors. And that's why I'm really focused on, what are the nuts and bolts to what happens next? Yeah. Not only with that vacancy, but how are they going to govern from an officer position at the Board of Supervisors come January 6th?
The fact that she had that easy out of the health, I really am voting that there's a method to her reasoning. It's going to come out. I think there's something brewing.
I hope there is.
It would have been too easy to have just said health and let it go.
It's too interesting to not come. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Just because the part of me that loves gossip columns. That's
right.
I hope something comes out. Gosh,
there's
already
got to be a reason.
It's so juicy as it is. But Barry, thank you so much.
With the last thing, her message was so kind of out there and quick that I don't think staff got a good review of it because there was a couple words missing in it. So, and that was discussed as well, that a lot of her own staff didn't even know that was going to take place. So, is she using wording that wasn't really vetted by staff? And they're saying, well, what are you saying here? Because people are going to think, what do you mean safety and security? So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, which thickens the plot for sure.
It does.
Barry, where can people read your article?
It's SD, as in San Diego, SD Rostra, ROSTRA.com, SDRostra.com.
Barry, thank you so much. Barry Jantz, appreciate everything you do. Have so much respect for you and your opinion and everything that you've done in your political life. And thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Michael. All right, take care.
That was interesting, huh?
Yeah.
That was good. Barry's a really good dude, and that was a really good segment, and I thought it was super interesting, and the subject is very interesting as well.
I'm curious, you were mentioning La Mesa. How did he play a role, and I don't recall if he did, but, with La Mesa attempting to pass the strict home storage law, was he involved in that? Did he have any
this was decades ago. He and another guy named Jay LeSueur, who ran for sheriff, and he was in the assembly. So they were serving on the La Mesa City Council.
So he's no longer involved in that portion.
Well, he hasn't been on the, I think this is like late 90s is when this happened.
Okay.
And they tried to get the police chief to issue CCWs in a as close to shall issue as they could. And they had a guy that had the votes, and then their third vote kind of waffled, and that was that. But that was Barry. He's a good dude.
Awesome.
All right, every week we find a defensive gun use story, and Alicia tells us the ins and outs. She's Alicia Curtin, so we call it Curtain Call. This week, a Houston, Texas homeowner's daughter awoke from her sleep Wednesday and shot and killed an alleged home intruder. What do you got, Alicia?
That's it. It's actually a twofer today. So
All right.
the article comes from Whitworth. I love them. So as you stated, so we have a Texas homeowner. According to the article, we have a gentleman who owns the home and he has a daughter. We don't have an age for the daughter. However, there's a quote from her that sounds, in my opinion, very simplistic. I'm going to guess not on the older adult side. So we have a home in Texas, 3 p.m., middle of the day. Man breaks into the home. The daughter happens to be taking a nap. She's asleep. She awakes to hearing noises in the home. Someone's there. She wakes from her nap and sees the intruder. This is Texas. She pulls a firearm and she uses it.
Wow.
And, upon calling and first responders arriving, he was already dead on arrival.
Wow.
So it just goes to really just to show, if you look at statistics, middle of the night, or late in the evening tends to when burglars think that you may not be awake, that they maybe can sneak in and get the things that they want. This was middle of the day. Maybe they were assuming that homeowners would be at work. Just really goes to show there is no really safe time of the day.
Yeah. Well, it was a nice home in a nice neighborhood, too.
Right.
That's interesting.
Right.
Any consequences? Did she, hey, this was a clear self-defense case?
This was just on the 11th. There is no statement or declaration either way, whether it was a justified or if there's potential charges. I mean, it's Texas, so I mean, the odds are in her favor. I don't anticipate or see anything coming her way, but there's no mention.
May the odds be ever in her favor.
And I think they are. I think they are. And our two for our part two is that there's another in the same article. There's a mention of another home invasion in Ohio, so not Texas. We are moving to Ohio, and same thing. However, 3:30 a.m.
Wow.
So it's like that 3 o'clock hour, but
Yeah.
on the opposite end of the clock. So 3:30 a.m. Homeowner, intruder broke in at 3:30 a.m. and this was on a Sunday morning. And this one, the intruder was injured. Was transported to the hospital, and he did later die at the hospital and was pronounced dead. So he did not, the threat was stopped.
Yeah.
Right? But he did survive for a period of time, and then he did.
Legally, philosophically, logically, no one's breaking into your home to,
Make you a sandwich?
bake you a birthday cake.
Right.
Right. If someone's in your home, the idea that they could cause you severe harm is very real.
Absolutely.
If they are in your home uninvited, they're not your friend.
Absolutely not.
And so both these people were clearly in a position where severe harm and possibly death was going to come to them,
Right.
but for access to a firearm.
Right. Now, the only time where kind of an example of a circumstance to where this could have been problematic. Mm-hmm. Let's say that, and I will tell you that just to kind of the level bringer is going to be a really great attorney. But for example, if one of these intruders, you wake up and you hear them and they are just simply taking jewelry out of your jewelry box, taking your TV off the wall, something like that. In the state of California, we can't defend property, right? But the presence of that person in your home, right there a factor that a really great attorney is going to be able to frame that really well for you. But
I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. I'm not totally explaining this as perfectly as I could, but what you've just described, the fact that they're in your home and therefore can be considered a threat, even though all they're doing is taking jewelry or taking a TV off the wall or whatever. Right. That's why castle doctrine exists.
Right.
And that's California does have castle doctrine.
We do.
But we also don't have. Not every area has the best district attorney in the world either.
Correct.
We have a very good district attorney here in San Diego.
We do.
Orange is pretty good. Inland Empire, that's San Bernardino and Riverside, theirs are pretty good, is my understanding. But LA, forget it. It's big trouble. So, so give me one lesson we've learned. We two 2 people, 2 home break-ins, two different states, same outcome. The victim is safe. So what? Give me a lesson we learned.
I think
from
the
both of these.
lesson learned from this, really, the thing as I read through what really stood out to me is just the whole concept of time, right?
Yeah.
You never know. You never know when you might fall victim. You never know.
3 a.m., 3 p.m.
3:30 a.m., 3 p.m. There is no safe time.
There you
So
go.
by no means do we want people to be paranoid, but we want people to be aware,
There
right?
you go.
And just be ready.
Awesome.
That's it.
Curtain call. Thank you so much, Alicia. Okay, deployment, we want you to know where you need to be. Now, this week is Christmas. So we want you to be with loved ones or family, or sometimes your family are the loved ones. But either way, we want you to have a beautiful week of spending time with people. And thank you so much for everything you've done for the Second Amendment community this year. Special thanks real quick to Rick Cohen. He's a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Rick. Rick, man, you volunteer so much. I truly hope you have a very Merry Christmas this week. You have earned it and deserve it. So thank you so much. Okay, so this segment is sponsored by Red, White, and Badass Brew. Go to RWBB Coffee, rwbbcoffee.com. Use GOR to get 15% off and order yourself some coffee. Not too late to give coffee as a gift. In fact, let's talk about last-minute gifts for gun owners. Go to gunownersradio.com Now who did this? Just
/read.
/read. Okay, go to /read. You're going to look
first article.
Last minute gifts for the gun owner in your life. You're going to go to gunownersradio.com/read, and you're going to read last minute gifts for the gun owner in your life. So what's there? Well, Mastering Self-Defense Week, March 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. You could train or you could buy training with Masad Ayub, the legend. Tickets are on sale now. There's space in the MAG 20 classroom course. Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement is the name of the curriculum. This is a must for CCW holders and instructors, pretty much anybody that owns a gun for self-defense. Seal 1's the sponsor. Thank you so much, Seal 1. You're going to have a chance to win a MAG 40 class thanks to Seal 1. Buy some Seal 1, and you'll be automatically entered to win a MAG 40 class. Make sure to use the code MASSAD. Okay, so there's 2 gifts right there. You could buy somebody a seat in the Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement, and boom, email it to them or write it in a card or whatever. You got them a gift. What a nice gift. Or buy some Seal 1, and then you could also be entered to win a MAG 40 class. So buy some your favorite gun owner some Seal 1, and boom, 2 gift ideas right there. The next is Intro to Modern Off-Grid Comms Communications class. That's January 25th. Use code MERRY, MERRY, for $50 off. It expires on Christmas. Another great gift idea. This would be a great gift for anybody interested in off-grid comms, anybody interested in the possibility of ham or emergency preparedness or earthquake preparedness or whatever. It's got great reviews. It's happening in El Cajon on January 25th. RWBB coffee gift card. So you could buy them a Red, White, and Badass Brew coffee gift card and then use GOR, the code GOR for 15% off. That's a good gift. Buying somebody some coffee because it makes it look like you're thoughtful when really you just forgot to get them a gift. You know what I mean? Which I think is really nice. Go to Cargo at 423 Broadway, El Cajon for some cool gifts. They have all kinds of cool gifts in every price category too.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So if you got to buy some stocking stuffers or you need to buy like 1 or 2 extra gifts or, you know, that coworker that you don't really care that much about, or you want to buy something for someone who's actually special and you care about, boom.
A little bit of everything.
Cargo at 423 Broadway. So they're open tomorrow, right? They're open tomorrow. I'm assuming they're open on Christmas Eve. But don't push it. Go there tomorrow.
Yeah. Buy
something cool. And then consider an SDCGO membership. If you know somebody who's not a member in San Diego, then buy them an SDCGO membership for a year so that they can be exposed to the fantastic Second Amendment stuff that we do. So go to sdcgo.org and buy that today. Also, I want you to mark your calendar. we're having a very cool event in January. Trump inauguration viewing party in San Diego County. That's Monday, January 20th, 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. because that's when the inauguration happens. It's at the Legacy Center, 875 Hotel Circle South in San Diego. Trump inauguration viewing party. San Diego County gun owners are going to be there. The Lincoln Club will be there. The Republican Party of San Diego will be there. Reform California will be there. 9 a.m. Pacific Standard on January 20th, 2025. President Donald J. Trump takes office, and you're invited to watch it live from the comfort of the theater with hundreds of other Republicans and patriots from around San Diego County. So you're going to get to meet all kinds of movers and shakers in San Diego County. You're going to get to celebrate this event, but you need to purchase tickets in advance. So go to sdcgo.org, sdcgo.org, and buy tickets to the Trump inauguration viewing party on January 20th, which is also MLK Day. I think that's awesome. So I'm sure we'll say a couple of things about Martin Luther King, particularly since the Republican Party is going to be there. And Martin Luther King is one of the most famous Republicans out there. Okay, now let's talk to Sam. No?
Almost.
Not yet?
Not yet.
He's not on there. Okay. Well, let's talk about a couple other things. So coming up, we're going to talk about, and this is very, very closely related to what Barry talked about with the county board. Nora Vargas steps down, and she is the author of this Super Sanctuary County deal. So we're going to talk about that. But one thing I wanted to put up, can you put up that graphic, the state of California, the red versus blue? Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk about that. Now, a lot of people have seen this, and I've seen some commentary on this. And what it's showing is the counties in California that voted blue in 2020. And then it shows the counties in 2024. And it looks like a lot of these counties went from blue to red. Now, Trump got about 40%, just over 40% of the vote in California. Whereas in 2020, he got like 34, I want to say 34% of the vote. So there was a, massive improvement. But the commentary I'm hearing, the narrative I'm hearing specifically related to this map is that, hey, California's turning red. And here's kind of, I'm going to be a wet blanket. That's not what's going on. Right. That's not what happened. And I don't think that that's what this map shows. If all you have for context is this 2020 map and the 2024 map, then it obviously would look that way. But what's missing is the 2016 map and the 2012 map and the 2008 map. All those counties, a lot of those blue counties were red before 2020. San Bernardino, Riverside. Riverside's a very red county. Even Orange County. A lot of the counties there that are blue in 2020 are rural counties. So there's a lot of farming. There's a lot of, agriculture, and they turned blue in 2020. So this isn't a case where we're seeing blue counties turn red. This is a case where we're seeing red counties go back to red. And in fact, not enough of the red counties went back to red as I think we all hope. There really should be a few more in there that should have gone red that didn't. So I don't know what's going to happen in 2026. I don't know what's going to happen in 2028. Anyone that tells you different is trying to sell you something. But I do know that this isn't California steadily turning red. 2020 was kind of a bump, where I still don't really know exactly what happened. I think that there were a lot of factors on why people turned against Trump. The economy was faltering because of COVID. I think that there was a lot of noise out there. It was the first election where they really pushed mail-in voting. So you got a larger sample size. I'm not implying fraud. What I'm implying is that the more people voted who maybe aren't as passionate or knowledgeable about politics, and a lot of them turned out to be blue voters. I think that there are a lot of people moving out of the city of San Diego, the city of LA, the city of San Francisco, and they're moving into rural areas. San Bernardino and Riverside has seen a huge influx of LA invaders, and they're bringing their blue voting with them. So I wanted to point that out. Look, I don't want to be negative. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. Obviously, the more, not obviously, but I would think it's fair to say that the more red this state becomes, the more pro Second Amendment I would hope it would be. But even that's not always, the case. We talked about John McCann, the mayor of Chula Vista, and he wants to run for county board of supervisor. I don't think he has a shot at winning because the district numbers, just because of math. But John McCann voted for a gun ban. He voted for a magazine ban. So just simply putting him on the board of supervisors, it's not going to make it a more pro Second Amendment county. I wanted to point that out. Should I keep going or is Sam on there? No Sam. All right, well.
Hope he's okay.
I do too. Hope that little fella's okay. All right, well, let's talk about a couple of things. So one of the things that is directly related to what we talked about with Barry is the fact that the sheriff said, hey, you know what? This super sanctuary county thing, I'm not playing that game. And I want to make sure that people fully understand exactly what happened there. Because what they think happened, what I've seen, what people think happened, that's not exactly what happened. But basically the county said, hey, you know what? Law enforcement isn't going to cooperate with the deportation of illegal immigrants, specifically dangerous illegal immigrants. In other words, illegal immigrants who are here and have committed some kind of violent crime. So let's talk about exactly what was going on there. But first, let's watch this video that explains the situation a little.
It's a showdown in San Diego as elected officials there are at odds over how much they should cooperate with the incoming Trump administration's mass deportation plan. San Diego County supervisors voted 3-1 Tuesday to make San Diego a so-called super sanctuary county. The new policy would prohibit its sheriff's department from working with ICE and federal authorities to deport migrants, even when migrants are in custody for committing crimes. Current state sanctuary law makes exceptions for local and federal authorities to cooperate in cases of migrants committing violent crimes. The San Diego County Sheriff says she will defy the new policy while continuing to follow state law. Nora Vargas, a county supervisor who brought forth the proposal to not allow federal and local cooperation in deportations, said we will not allow our local resources to be used for actions that separate families, harm community trust, or divert critical local resources away from addressing our most pressing challenges. Another supervisor who voted for its passage argued residents are less likely to report crimes if they believe that person could get deported, resulting in a family separated. The only supervisor who voted against it argued the policy is protecting criminals, not San Diego residents and law-abiding migrants.
Making sure that people know that they can report crimes to the sheriff and that they don't need to be concerned that that's going to immediately trigger deportation strongly outweighs any potential concerns.
This proposed legislation, to me, seeks to prioritize the interest of illegal criminal immigrants over the safety of law-abiding immigrants and citizens. I don't think we can continue down this path.
After the proposal passed, the sheriff, a Democrat, responded, saying the Board of Supervisors does not set policy for the sheriff's office. The sheriff, as an independently elected official, sets the policy for the sheriff's office. State law allows for the sheriff's office to share release dates for individuals who are in sheriff's custody only if they have qualifying convictions for specific serious, violent, or sex crimes. The sheriff isn't the only elected official to speak out against the new policy. A local mayor in San Diego County is also publicly voicing his opposition in a video message on X.
This is really super tone deaf if you consider what just happened in the last election. Most of America wants.
Okay, that was Bill Wells, who's an awesome Second Amendment guy. He's the mayor of El Cajon. But really what I wanted to focus on was what the sheriff said and what they're saying. First, Tara Lawson-Raymer, who's horrible at her job and unfortunately just got reelected. She kind of did this whole scare tactic of like, well, gee, people are going to stop reporting crimes if they're afraid they're going to get deported. That's not, first off, she doesn't care about that. She's anti-cop. She's defund the police. She's a lunatic. She doesn't actually care about that. She's trying to pull at people's heartstrings. The actual function here is if someone gets arrested for a major violent crime, like, assault, sexual assault, something like that, and they're being booked into jails, then the sheriff's office has the ability, and in fact, the way the state's law is written, it's kind of the duty to say, hey, this person's also here illegally so that the federal government can go ahead and deport them. Why would she do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons she would do that. She doesn't want to fill her jails. She doesn't have enough jail space as it is. So the ability to say, hey, you know what, this person broke a lot of laws, but they also broke a federal law, which is, they're here illegally. So let's turn them over to the federal government. So the federal government's, they're the responsibility of the federal government. So somebody in custody that just raped somebody isn't going to fear reporting illegal activity because they might get deported. That doesn't make any sense, Tara Lawson-Raymer. You're completely pulling things out of your whatever. So, I mean, she's just so horrible at her job. It's ridiculous. So I wanted to read the press release real quick. Today, Sheriff Kelly A. Martinez issued the following statement, and she did a little bit deeper dive, which we're not going to really go into, related to Chairman Vargas's board letter on adopting a board policy on immigration enforcement. The sheriff respects Chairman Vargas and the members of the Board of Supervisors. However, she has been clear on her position on this matter. As stated in the sheriff's statement, she will continue to follow state law, and there is no loophole in state statutes referenced in the chairman's board letter. Current state law strikes the right balance between limiting local law enforcement's cooperation with immigration authorities, ensuring public safety, and building community trust. Basically, she said, let me keep going. State law allows for the sheriff's office to share release dates for individuals who are in sheriff's custody only if they have qualifying convictions for specific serious violent or sex crimes. That's Government Code 7282.5. It gives the authority for law enforcement to cooperate with immigration authorities as prescribed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so it's basically the county board. She's not even defying. The county board is saying, hey, here's what we want you to do. And the sheriff is saying, that's not what we do. I mean, it would be like if the county board, went to, went to a Miramax and said, here's the movie we want you to make. And they defied law by not making the movie. No, they don't have any authority to do that. The county board of supervisors has nothing to do. They can't make the sheriff override state law, and they certainly have nothing to do with her policies. But the policy here is right in line with state law. So, the sheriff is basically saying, hey, look, we're going to continue to follow the law. That's what we're going to do. You guys go have your political fight, make your political messages, whatever. We're going to follow the law. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important, number one, by the way. The county board, you're not going to see them say, hey, local law enforcement, sheriff's office, we no longer want you enforcing federal gun laws, right? They're not going to do that. So they're not against the concept of law enforcement, enforcing federal law or state law. It's not a philosophical thing for them. It's not like there's some kind of principle that they're standing on. You know, they're not worried that, hey, gosh, golly, gun owners aren't going to report crimes if they think that their federal laws will be enforced. No, they're completely, you know, full of it when they try to paint this picture that it's unethical or wrong or, you know, think of the children or whatever their stupid argument is. But the other side is the sheriff's side. And I think we need to be consistent too. So the sheriff is saying, look, I'm going to follow the law. And I think that's exactly what you want in a sheriff. That's what she portrayed. That's the sheriff she portrayed she would be when she ran. And frankly, trying to get a sheriff or any law enforcement officer to not follow the law is not the way you push back against laws, whether they're laws you dislike or laws that are unconstitutional. That's not the American way. There are many avenues. You can go to the courts. You can get, you know, people elected. In California, you can even, you know, you have the proposition route you can take. But trying to, you know, if a law passes, you know, representatives, you know, sign a law into being, and your solution is to get the law enforcement officer to not follow that law, it's delusional. It's never going to happen. It never has happened. And it's frankly un-American. That's not the American system. I, from day one with San Diego County gun owners, have said, hey, comply, but work to change the laws. And we've done that. We've shown that it can happen. But not complying with the law doesn't make you a tough guy. And expecting a law enforcement officer to put everything on the line to not enforce a law that you disagree with while you're sitting there behind your computer. You know what I mean? So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is there are going to be times, there have been times when the sheriff's department has enforced laws that I don't like, that I think are unconstitutional, that maybe are constitutional, but I disapprove of them. And what is never going to be the solution is for me to try to convince law enforcement to not enforce those laws. So if we're saying that about the other side when they talk about immigration, we have to be consistent and say that about, you know, everything across the board, whether it's gun laws or not. So, you know, all the sheriff is saying is, I'm going to continue to follow the law, and this opinion piece that the county board has issued, you know, isn't the law. That's not how this works. They don't have the authority. That's not how policy is put in place. And my policy follows state law. I'm enforcing state law. I'm enforcing federal law by going through state law, is in fact what it is. So I think that's an extremely important point to make. Before I go on, I want to talk about the county board and the makeup, because I think there's a misunderstanding of the history of the county board too. Before I do, Alicia, what are your thoughts so far?
You know, as you're making those statements, I agree. But I actually had a thought, and that's something that we've never discussed, so I don't know where you stand, and I'm curious. You're discussing. It's kind of taking the same concept of the larger entity having a stand, and then a smaller entity attempting to kind of change that. I'm curious, federally, and if you don't want to go into this now, let me know.
No,
but I'm curious. Federally, marijuana, illegal.
Yeah.
State, California.
Yep.
Right. I'm curious, kind of, because as you're making the statements you're making, in my mind, I kind of kept it coming back to that. Federally, it's still illegal.
Yep.
California is choosing not to put manpower, money, funding into enforcement.
Right.
I'm curious how you kind of where you fall on that.
We've talked about it from a gun owner's point of view, and something has to get done. And the problem with marijuana and guns, you know, because right now it is legal to buy and use marijuana.
Depending on the agency you're interacting with.
Well, what I'm saying is there are stores,
correct,
like
correct.
in strip malls,
right,
you know,
right,
where
right.
you can walk in and buy marijuana. You can buy gummies and whatever,
but don't take it through a Border Patrol checkpoint.
Right, but you know,
right.
But you can buy it. You know, you can a seller can go get a permit. They can set up shop. It's not under the table. It's all out in you know. So because the state of California has said Now, if you are a gun owner, you are technically committing a felony if you're using marijuana.
Because your background check is a federal check.
Right. And when now they did just change, they took a minor step and they changed marijuana to a different classification. But here's the problem. The problem is Republicans hate pot and Democrats hate guns.
Right.
So neither one of them are doing anything useful on this. They're both deciding to be hypocrites. Something has to happen. Now there's been a case, there's been a federal case. A lady tried to use her medical marijuana card. This was in Nevada, as a form of ID to buy a gun. And basically, and the court said, look, they went in and said, well, she's not using it. She just has this medical marijuana card. And the court said, look, if she's got a medical marijuana card, it's a pretty easy leap to believe that she's a user of this, of these drugs. So what I think needs to happen is, not complying with the law is not an option. What we need to do is work towards fixing this. And the way you fix it is through Congress. Congress needs to fix this. Republicans are all about guns. Okay, well, help us. Now you've got control of Congress, meaning the Senate and the House of Representatives. You have Trump in the White House. You have the Supreme Court. So show us just how supportive you are of gun owners and help us out here not get arrested because somebody's taking some kind of gummy for sleep or whatever. I don't care. I don't know. I don't know what they do. Who cares? But show us now that you can responsibly use government more so than Democrats and help gun owners out. So, and that's the point I want to make is this whole, and we even talked about it with open carry versus CCW at the beginning of the show. This whole non-compliance, like I'm just going to sit here and cross my arms and be pure of thought. That's, fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, what you have to do to change policy is change the policy.
Be active.
Not just decide like, well, gee golly, I just don't like it. So I'm going to sit here and, do whatever. You know what I never notice? I never see people that are like, well, I'm not going to comply. I never see them not comply. You know what I mean? They leave some message on a post somewhere. But you don't see them proudly walking around saying, I'm not complying, because they're just as worried. They're just as afraid of being, serving time in a federal pen. But that's not what we do. It's not what we do here at Gun Owners Radio. It's not what we do at San Diego County Gun Owners or Orange County or Inland Empire. We file lawsuits. We get the right people elected. We take action. And our members, just by, joining and saying, hey, I'm a part of this thing. I'm going to share their social media. I'm going to give $10 a month, whatever it is. That's exactly what you're doing. Non-compliance is a cop-out. It's not moving the ball forward in any way. Now, there have been some talks. Let's talk about the County Board of Supervisors. So the County Board of Supervisors right now, as it stands, 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. It used to be 5 Republicans. For about 30 years, 25, 30 years, it was the same Republicans. And I'm hearing people who didn't pay any attention to government until COVID talk about how there's this recent turn from conservative to progressive or from conservative to liberal when it comes to the county board. Well, when they had 5 Republicans on, it wasn't a conservative board. It wasn't a conservative board. And those who were paying attention to government, pre-COVID, back when there were the 5 sitting on there, know exactly what I'm talking about. There was on the kind of the coastal area where La Jolla is, there was a lady named Pam Slater, and she was nowhere near conservative. She was nowhere near conservative. In fact, after she was termed out and left, she turned into Pam Slater Price. That's what it was. She turned into a Democrat. She became a Democrat. She was pro-choice. She was not good on guns. She was very, very, in line with these extremists on the when it comes to environmentalism. She was very much considered herself a feminist. Kind of a radical feminist. Down south was a guy named Chris Cox, who's married to Cheryl Cox. She was the mayor of Chula Vista for a while. In no universe was Chris Cox a conservative. He was barely right of center. Now you could argue like, well, gee, Mike, he was representing a district that, isn't conservative, whatever. Okay, fine, but the decisions he made weren't conservative. The board wasn't conservative. Now, there was a guy named Ron Roberts who kind of was the downtown guy, Point Loma, downtown. Ron Roberts was an interesting kind of a libertarian light, which made him very, very interesting. And you could tell he was doing his best to respect people's individual rights in kind of a, small L libertarian way. But I still wouldn't quite call him, conservative. I mean, he was right of center, unlike the other two that I mentioned. And then there was Diane Jacob, who's out east. Diane Jacob's not conservative. Was not conservative. One of the last battles we fought before she rode off into the sunset was she was trying to stop shooting on federal lands.
Right.
Remember that?
Yep.
And we beat her, which I'm real happy about. I mean, she was hard to work with when it came to guns. She was also very, very kind of this extremist when it came to environmentalism. Not a conservative. Now, where I think they did some things right, that doesn't mean they were all wrong. It just means they weren't conservative. It's not like we had this conservative board for 30 years and then all of a sudden it started to turn progressive. That's not true. One thing, some of the things they did right that maybe confused people for conservative is they were hyper focused on making sure that the roads were paved.
Right.
Like you could tell once you left a city and you were going onto a county road, all of a sudden the potholes all disappeared, and they funded emergency services. They were extremely good at funding emergency services, and they balanced the budget. But I think they got too much credit for balancing the budget. I mean, we're talking about the 90s and the early 2000s. People's housing, was going through the roof. They had more money than they knew what to do with, So, but okay, fine. They balanced the budget. And of course, they're Republican. San Diego tended to be more Republican, so they got this rap of being conservative. Bill Horn, who is inland north, Bill Horn was a conservative.
Right.
Like, period. That dude was conservative. You go down the checklist, and he was absolutely conservative. But he was the only one. He was conservative. And Ron Roberts was kind of small L libertarian, and the other three were pretty left leaning. They certainly weren't conservative in any sense of the word. Now that's the other thing that makes it so tough that I just hate labels, and I've just kind of gone so far away from labels. What is conservative? What's conservative? What's liberal? What's progressive? This year's conservative is next year's progressive. Last year's progressive is this year's conservative. It's you look at I was having a conversation with somebody a couple months ago, one of our members, and he was saying, I'm kind of, a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right. And he talked about foreign policy. And he said, man, I want a tough military. And if somebody crosses us, we're going to go stomp them out. Okay, that's not conservative. That's not a conservative foreign policy. Maybe in the last couple decades it is. That maybe a lot of conservatives have picked that up and decided that's what it was. But if you're the type of person that wants a strong military and you want to go enforce the U.S.'s will on other people, welcome to the Democratic Party, liberal.
I wonder if
because that's
you think of the statements, right?
Yeah.
So you speak of the military, you speak about defending rights and freedoms and
Right.
things like that. I mean, in some part, you can see patriotism in there,
Yep.
which patriotism and conservativeness, they tend to kind of come together.
Well,
but if you're talking about foreign policy,
right now,
that's a different, right.
Right now they do.
Right.
In the 60s, I don't know if patriotism
Right.
and conservatism were on the same page.
Right.
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 I think it was
You're
very
right.
different. But as far as we, especially before World War II, non-interventionism was the Republican way. And they were criticized for being isolationists. And then I think a lot of conservatives, served in the military, and it changed. Things changed. I think Ronald Reagan saber rattling, which worked
Right.
against the Soviets, I think things changed. But the point is, that's conservative. Because when I was growing up, non-interventionism when foreign policy was conservative. The idea that we have this big, huge military and we go put troops on the ground. We go bomb people and we threaten them with war. That was as left wing as it came. That was Democrat foreign policy. And you talk about other issues, LGBT issues. Democrats were horrible on LGBT issues. The first openly gay elected official was Harvey Milk in San Francisco, and he was a Republican activist. You know, so what's conservative here? What's liberal? What's left wing? What's right wing?
So if you would have asked me before bringing up examples, my brain, and again, I think this is very unique, and I think that's why there's a lot of variables. Me, it goes, government, get out of my business.
Right.
For me, it's not about the military. It's not about war. You know, that's not where my mind goes. For me, and I think there's. I mean, I'm curious. What, like Rich? What if you're to be asked? What's, you know? How do you define a conservative?
For me, I think it comes to the individual rights, you know? So that's the way I was thinking about it as you guys were discussing it, is, you know, what are the policies that advance individual freedoms, right? Versus having an authoritarian, centralized state, you know, controlling your life. And so.
Look at the individual rights to do drugs, you know, because look at the way that both sides view law enforcement. You know, now we're pro back the blue, right? We're all about, you know, law enforcement. We want a strong sheriff and, you know, Wyatt Earp and blah, 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 blah. Back in the 60s, law enforcement was the tool of the left, was the tool of Democrats. You know, they would go and they would use law enforcement, you know, against civil rights, against, you know, you name it, you know, and it was the Republicans, it was the right of center who said, hey, you know what, we don't like this strong law enforcement. We don't like an overbearing police force. You know, that was definitely, you know, a left of center or a Democrat idea. Now it's completely flipped. It's completely flipped. And it's kind of interesting. You look at the South, you look at like, well, yeah, gee, the South's red, right? Alabama, Georgia, you know, Mississippi, you know, they're red. That's Republican. Wasn't always, you know. What happened was they used to be deep, deep blue from the Civil War to the 60s. They were deep, deep blue. In fact, if you go and look at some of their state government, many of their representatives, many of their local, you know, state government, many of their city council members, many of their governors in these red states are very blue. It's very, very Democrat. What happened was in the 60s, there were a couple of different versions of the Civil Rights Act, but they finally passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act that basically said, hey, you can't discriminate. You have to do business with people no matter what their religion or their race or whatever is. That was very, very much championed by the Republican Party, you know? And what happened was the Democrats, it kind of turned them into like, it kind of split them apart. You had these New England Democrats, you know, like the Kennedys, who were like, yeah, we got to stop this whole racism thing. And then you had the Southern Dixiecrats. They were like, no way, this is our tradition. You know, we absolutely love Jim Crow laws. So what happened was the South kind of split its vote and started electing people like Nixon, you know, and they were very unhappy with the Republican Party. But anyway, so once you got past that issue, once you got to Reagan, you know, and it took a good 15 or so years to get past that issue. What was the next issue that they embraced? It was abortion. Because there was a lot of religious folks in the South, and the pro-life folks said, hey, you know what? Our party is clearly the Republican Party. And so that's what really started. I mean, if you look at, let's see, you had Nixon was voted Republican, and he took the South. But then what happened after Nixon? There was Ford, right? I mean, the next elected president was Carter, who was a Southern Democrat.
Right.
And by no means a racist. There's nobody that thinks that, you know, he embraced the racist part of the Democratic Party. So anyway, the idea of left and right and conservative and liberal just has no meaning anymore. And there's nobody who was ever paying attention to the County Board of Supervisors in San Diego thought that those 5 people that serve, Bill Horn, Ron Roberts, Pam Slater-Price, Greg Cox, that was a conservative board. It just wasn't. It just wasn't. People started paying attention during COVID. And they don't really, I don't think people take the time to sit down and kind of think through these complicated issues, and don't really think about like what fundamentally makes somebody a conservative, what fundamentally makes somebody a liberal. And there were a lot of indicators that San Diego was turning Democrat, was going further to the left. You know, people were moving in, and there was kind of a younger demographic, and the military was kind of moving out. There were far less of an influence. But I don't even think it was Nathan Fletcher that was indicating this big change. There was a guy named Dave Roberts before him, right before him, that was had some major problems. He had some personal friend. There was kind of weren't quite sure what the relationship was, and he hired this person to be his personal driver, and that was a big controversy. He was on the county board. He was a one-term guy. They voted him right out. And that was kind of what kicked off this Democrat leadership, and then there was Bob Filner, who won as San Diego mayor, and that was an indicator that things. But one thing that they continue to have in common, and I think that the Republicans are right to emphasize this, is the fact that all these Democrats are getting kicked out of office. Dave Roberts got kicked out of office because of a controversy, because of a fiscal controversy. Bob Filner, sexual harassment. Nathan Fletcher, sexual harassment. Nora Vargas, who knows what's going on?
There's something.
Something's going on. She didn't get kicked out.
Security and safety, right?
Yeah, right. But you're seeing a lot of these folks get kicked out of office, and I think that the Republicans strategically would be wise to say, hey, look, you guys told us, or the Democrats told us that if you put them in power, that things will be better. And they simply aren't. They can't even stay in office, let alone fill a pothole, let alone figure out what's going on with the drug and homeless problem. So anyway, all right. So let's move on. Anything you guys want to add to that?
No.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's out there.
Well, one of the things that I think it's important to mention to the folks that are listening is like, why should gun owners care about who's on the board of supervisors, right? And just remind people, it's like,
sure.
How's it going to affect the lives of gun owners? Sure.
So we want a pro Second Amendment majority. We want at least 3 people, that are reasonable on the Second Amendment, that's not what we have now, because they do a lot of things. There are a lot of, in the unincorporated areas, there are a lot of gun ranges, but they also pass laws for the unincorporated areas, like storage laws they've passed. They were the ones that have basically made it impossible for people in San Diego to home manufacture a firearm for their own personal use. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that they have influence on that directly impact gun owners. The other thing is, so they're button heads with the sheriff right now, and they don't set policy. But one thing that they do is the county gives the sheriff their budget. So the sheriff doesn't collect taxes. The county board collects taxes, and they say, all right, sheriff, how much money do you need and what do you need it for? And then they decide how much to give her. Right now, it's taken 8 months. It's down from a year and a half, but it's taken 8 months to get your CCW. If you have 3,
if they cut the budget.
Right? And they don't have, they have the ability to go down to each line item and say, no, we're not giving $1 million for this. We'll give you, everything else, but we're not giving you what you need for this particular line item, like, CCWs. And suing for that, good luck. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying it's impossible, but so the real solution is getting people into office who are at the very least not anti-Second Amendment. Like if they could just not be horrible to gun owners, that'd be something. So that'd
be progress.
That'd be progress.
Yeah.
That would be progressive. Okay, so something happened here in Carlsbad, which is kind of interesting. There was a shooting in Wisconsin. A young lady. I don't think she wasn't even an adult, was she?
Nope.
She was under 18, and she shot up a Christian school, private Christian school in Wisconsin. And every indicator is that there are all kinds of red flags that went up. And she was quiet. She didn't have any friends. She was listening and or following kind of kind of violent or questionable content online, and all the usual stuff was happening. But it turns out there's a San Diego connection, which is kind of interesting. So out of Carlsbad, 20-year-old man from Carlsbad. This is from Fox 5 in San Diego. 20-year-old man from Carlsbad, who authorities say was found to be in contact with a school shooter in Wisconsin, is now facing a potential gun violence emergency protective order, court documents show. Remember I said a couple months ago, I said they're going to stop calling them GVROs. They're going to start calling them protective orders because I think that polls better. Right. So protective orders. Mm-hmm. On Wednesday, the Carlsbad Police Department filed the petition against the man with a hearing on the restraining order scheduled for Friday, January 3rd. The move follows revelations by law enforcement reportedly linking the man to the 15-year-old. She was 15. This murderer in Wisconsin was a 15-year-old girl. Anyway, linking the man to a 15-year-old Natalie Samantha Rupnow. The teen opened fire during a study hall at Abundant Life Christian School in the city of Madison, Wisconsin, earlier this week. One student and a teacher were killed amid the carnage, and 6 others were injured. Authorities confirmed. Rupnow was also found dead at the school by an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, Wisconsin authorities said, which is extremely common with these mass murders, as usually the last victim is the one doing the murdering. I just don't understand it. I don't think anybody truly does. As reported by the Associated Press, a California judge issued the restraining order against the Carlsbad man under the state's red flag law. Just days after the Wisconsin shooting, this type of gun confiscation legislation is intended to temporarily remove firearms from a person who's been deemed a threat to themselves or a person who's been deemed a threat to someone else. Also reported by the Associated Press, the Carlsbad man is suspected of plotting a mass shooting with Rupnow. Excuse me. Police say he had been messaging her prior to the shooting. He reportedly told FBI agents that he had discussed with Rupnow potential plans to target a government building while arming himself with explosives. When and where the potential act was to take place is unknown. As of Thursday, no charges have been announced against the Carlsbad man through the protective order. Though the protective order has been filed, local authorities have not yet confirmed on whether it's solely linked to apparent communications with the teen shooter in Wisconsin. Fox 5 KUSI has reached out to the Carlsbad Police Department for comment, but they haven't responded. Meanwhile, the FBI San Diego declined to provide a statement. And it goes on to talk about what is a GVEPO, they're now calling it, a gun violence emergency protective order. So they're not calling them GVROs anymore. They're calling them GVE. PO is kind of interesting. A couple things that are important to understand is, number one, this 20-year-old didn't have any guns and can't buy a gun. He's 20. He's in California. Is the way the law states right now, he wasn't even planning on shooting anybody. In fact, he was. It sounded like his plans involved explosives, arming himself with explosives.
So this is just seeing that slippery slope, right? They introduced it as being a protection from those who own firearms, violent tendencies.
It is, and I got to tell you, in all fairness, this is the first GVRO or whatever they're calling it now, the first protective order under the red flag laws. This is the first one I've seen them issue that actually kind of makes sense. It kind of goes to
bombing and threatening to bomb are already illegal.
Well, they are.
Right.
But what I'm saying is all the other ones I've seen, mm-hmm. it was they were doing something, they weren't planning a mass shooting. They were doing something else.
Like our driver that we had.
Right.
Right.
He was involved in a defensive gun use, and they said, well, we don't like the way he did his defensive gun use.
Right.
So we're going to issue a gun violence restraining order. This actually kind of falls into the way that they sold GVROs to the voter. They said, look, if somebody's thinking of doing something before they can do something, we want to take away their tools to be able to do something. I still think this is a dog and pony show. What they've been doing is issuing these protective orders or GVROs to kind of pad the numbers, and say, hey, look, we've issued 500 of these things. Well, yeah, 499 of them, you could have arrested them and taken their guns without a GVRO. There's no need for this. They're clearly abusing GVROs. So on the one hand, this is actually close to what they described, or the way they described they would use GVROs if passed. But on the other hand, it's not. He's not old enough to legally buy a gun, and he didn't have a gun, so they didn't even take guns away. And he wasn't planning on shooting anybody. Am I splitting hairs? I don't know if I'm splitting hairs, but the point is, like you said, if he's making terroristic threats,
Already illegal.
Yeah.
There's not a cop out there that would say, well, there's nothing I can do if all he's doing is making illegal terroristic threats. And what are they doing with this protective order? They're preventing him from buying guns that are already illegal for him to buy. Now we have, and the reason I know that they don't allow adults who are 20 to buy guns is because we have a lawsuit, that's trying to give those rights, or at least stop California from infringing on those rights, to adults. Anyway, so the impact. California's GVEPO is a key part of the state's broader efforts to prevent mass shootings, suicides, and other gun-related incidents. By providing a mechanism to temporarily remove firearms from those who pose a potential threat, officials with California Attorney General's office say GVEPOs help to reduce the immediate risk of violence and allows time for proper intervention. It is particularly beneficial for addressing the complex issues related to mental health and gun violence. Many instances of gun violence, including suicides, involve individuals who may not have previously been flagged as a criminal threat, but are at risk due to mental health struggles or sudden emotional distress. GVEPO aims to intervene before these situations escalate. It's so disappointing. This showed up on Fox 5 and KUSI. It's so disappointing. This is not a news article. They're not reporting news. They are advancing a narrative. That is not what they have done. The GVROs, these protective orders, that's not what they have done. And it is not the duty or responsibility of a reporter, whoever Amber Coakley is. It is not your job to explain why we should support a political invention like a GVEPO. This is such a horrible article. Anyway, interesting connection to an absolute tragic event. I hope that this guy is prosecuted for whatever crimes it's determined that he was looking to commit. I just don't understand. I really just don't understand what was going on with this 15-year-old girl. We will never know what was going on with her because she ended her own life. But absolutely tragic. All the victims in Wisconsin, I'm so sorry. And it's certainly horrible that there was a connection here in Carlsbad, but this GVEPO did absolutely nothing to prevent anything. And it's important that we stop infringing on people's rights, that we stop treating the Second Amendment like it's some kind of secondary right. So I think that's the end. What do you think?
I think that's a great way to end.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you guys sitting and listening to us. Truly hope that you have a very Merry Christmas. Again, if you're not following us on social media, please do. If you're not getting the email, go to gunownersradio.com. And if you're interested in reaching out to the Second Amendment community and want to advertise with us, reach out to us. info@gunownersradio.com. Merry Christmas, everybody. Talk to you next week, and thank you guys so much for listening.